What's up, everybody? Tom here, back again with another video. And today I wanted to talk about something that's pretty important, and that is politics. Okay? So, pretty much the current situation is that Republicans control the entire government, which wouldn't be a big deal if the Republicans weren't so evil. And the Democrats, to be honest, most Democrats suck as well. You know, they're the same thing where they want tax cuts for the rich people, and let all that wealth just stay in the 1%. Meanwhile, pitting the working class people against each other. Right-leaning and left-leaning working class people against each other. Like, that's the whole strategy of the Democrats and the Republicans. So they're all bad. But I do think that Democrats are a lot better than the Republicans on a few key issues. And I'm talking about the Democrats in general. And those things are like climate change. Okay, so like regulations on emissions for companies and that kind of thing, and environmental standards. And then also social issues, they're a lot better on. For instance, women's rights, LGBT, especially things like voter suppression, which I think is a really big deal. The Democrats are way better on. Like the Republicans will just do everything they can to stop black people from voting, because black people usually lean more Democratic than Republican on like the grand scale. Obviously, you don't know how any individual person would vote, but like a higher percentage of black people are Democrat than white people. And so the Republicans go out of their way to try to prevent black people from voting. And they do things like closing voting booths in black areas, so it's harder for them to get to the voting booths. And they do things like restrict the types of IDs that black people are more likely to use, while allowing IDs that white people are more likely to use, like gun licenses. And for instance, this one in North Carolina was really bad. This got struck down in the Supreme Court, but if another case like this came up today, it probably wouldn't get struck down, because now there's a solid 5-4 majority of Republicans on the Supreme Court with Brett Kavanaugh. And what they did in North Carolina was like they did those things that I just talked about, and then they also like restricted early voting, which black people disproportionately used. And I forget, there were some other things that they did, and it's really bad, because what it means is just that if you're black, it's harder to vote in this country than if you're white from an institutional level. Republicans also do this thing called gerrymandering, and Democrats would do this if they were in power as well. But I mean, right now Republicans are doing it, and Democrats are never going to do voter suppression like black people are doing. But gerrymandering is basically redrawing the voting districts so that you either like dilute a whole bunch of Democrats so that none of the Democratic votes are able to swing a district into Democrat, or they like put all of the Democratic votes into one district, so that they win that district, but then they can't win any other district. So these kinds of things. It's called like vote packing and I forget the other one. These are the kinds of things that I think are really, really bad for America as a whole. Not to mention the Electoral College. I mean, the last two Republican presidents lost the popular vote. But, they were able to win based on these electoral maps. So the Electoral College is also really fucked up. Pretty much what we have now is a situation where it doesn't equal one person, one vote. White people's votes are a little bit more valuable based on the Electoral College and the voting districts. People that are in the middle of America have higher vote percentages have heavier weighted votes than people living in big cities, just because of the electoral college. It's really bad because it means that as time goes on, this country moves farther and farther away from a true democracy and more into a dictatorship, an oligarchy. Really, an oligarchy. What we have now is where the wealthy people control the politicians, and the politicians control normal people. So really, what we have is CEOs and corporate people and Wall Street that are really the ones that control legislation in America. Oh, another thing that Democrats, even like establishment Democrats, are better at than Republicans is the drug war. Another way of keeping black people disenfranchised. For some reason, Republicans want to keep the drug war going, but it hasn't been shown to work. And all you end up doing is locking people up for these nonviolent drug offenses. And then also disproportionately targeting black people with these policies as well. I mean, like, the war is just so bad. The American military budget is like $700 billion goes to the military. And our military is the largest than the next 10 countries combined. And they just voted bipartisan, by the way, to increase that budget by $100 billion per year. So we're spending $800 billion per year on the military. Meanwhile, there's homeless people in America, homeless veterans. There's 7 to 8 million people without health insurance. That's something else the establishment Democrats are better on is healthcare. Now, to be fair, establishment Democrats aren't great on it. What we need is Medicare for all, universal coverage, just like the rest of the developed world. And most establishment Democrats don't like that. They want to update the current system to not allow insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions and this type of thing. But the current system is still not good, because what we have right now is a system where care is rationed based on wealth, right? So if you have more money, then you get better care and you get faster care. And if you don't have money, you can't afford insurance, then you don't get any care. Under Medicare for all, everybody would have the government insurance, and care would be rationed on need, not based on wealth. So if you need something right away, you would get it. And if you don't need it, maybe you have to wait a little bit. It seems like a no-brainer, not to mention that the rest of the developed world is able to do this. Germany, Denmark, England, France, Spain, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Norway, all these countries. They have universal health care, and they spend less on health care than we do. Everybody's covered, and they have better health outcomes than we do. So the question is, why aren't we doing this? They say, there was a bipartisan study, which it wasn't nonpartisan. It was funded by the Koch brothers, but whatever. They say there was a nonpartisan study that said that Medicare for all would cost $32 trillion over the course of the next 10 years. So how can we afford that? Well, what they don't tell you is that the same fucking study that was funded by the Koch brothers said that the current system is going to cost $34 trillion over the next 10 years. That's $2 trillion more. So the real question is, how can we not afford to go onto Medicare for all? Fuck, man, I'm 25. I turned 26 in February, and I can't be on my parents' insurance after that. I don't get it. I don't get insurance through my employer. And fucking the jobs I can get suck dick. I'm in debt from college, man. And fuck, I can't afford to do insurance. I don't know what I'm gonna do. There's no more mandate, but the downside of that is that if I don't get insurance and then I need to get care, I'm gonna be fucked. I won't be able to afford it. And so that's what happens. You have people that don't get that don't seek medical attention because they're afraid they can't afford it. How the fuck is that happening in 2018? People that don't go to the doctor because they can't afford medical care. It's crazy. It's crazy. That's the current status that we have right now. Okay, so I wanted to talk about voting. Should you vote? Should you not vote? First of all, if there's a truly progressive candidate or a Justice Democrat, vote for that person, right? Unless they're a spoiler. Like if there's like, I don't know, if there's like some like progressive Green Party person in the race against like a Democrat and a Republican, and the Green Party person can never win, even though they have the better policies, you might still want to vote for the Democrat because you really don't want the Republican to win. And if the Democrats don't win a majority of seats in the House of Representatives, then the Republicans are going to continue to control everything. So at a certain point, you do have to just bite the bullet and vote for a Democrat, even if they're an establishment Democrat, because you want the Republicans to not have total control over the government and to continue disenfranchising black people and these types of things. Like Democrats need to be able to have some say, right? Otherwise, you get things like Brett Kavanaugh and gerrymandering and the drug war and these things. But I mean, if there's a good progressive candidate that is actually the main Democratic candidate going up against the Republican, then vote for that person. So here's what I did. I live in New York, right? And in the primaries, that's when you vote for like the Democrats that are running against each other. I voted for Cynthia Nixon over Andrew Cuomo because she's a progressive. Andrew Cuomo is a corrupt establishment Democrat corporatist. So I voted for Cynthia Nixon, who is in favor of Medicare for all. She's a progressive, right? But she ended up losing. Okay. But now Andrew Cuomo won the Democratic nomination. So now when it comes to Cuomo versus whatever Republican he's running against, and of course this is New York, so it doesn't really matter because New York always goes blue anyway, but still you should vote. And I'm going to vote for the Democrat who I hate over the Republican because the Republicans cannot continue to have control over the government. That's really, really bad because of things like the environment and these types of things. So what I'm saying is if there's a viable Justice Democrat or progressive candidate, vote for that person. If there's not, vote for a Democrat, even if they're a corporatist establishment Democrat who's really bad on things like war, like tax cuts for the rich, large donations, these types of things. There's a lot that's wrong in America right now, and it's just going to get worse if Republicans control the government. And I'm no fan of the Democrats either, but they're at least a little bit better than the Republicans. So, I mean, fuck, man, you got to do what you got to do.